What would you do if, just days after letting another man walk you home and laughing a little too loudly, you found legal papers waiting on your doorstep? Can a single night of harmless flirtation really destroy a marriage, or is there always more beneath the surface? The bistro's warm glow spilled onto the sidewalk as I stepped outside, the wine making everything feel softer around the edges. Tyler Griggs appeared beside me, like he'd been waiting, his gym-toned frame filling out his casual button-down perfectly. Eirene, right? From the morning spin classes? His smile was the kind that made you forget you were married. That's me, I laughed, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind my ear. Though I barely recognized you without the sweat and workout gear. Much better lighting out here, he said, gesturing to the street lamps. Mind if I walk with you? I'm heading that direction anyway. I should have said no. Should have remembered Victor waiting at home, probably helping Maya with her homework or reviewing client files at the kitchen table. Instead, I found myself nodding. Sure, why not? The walk to our apartment building took 15 minutes, but it felt like seconds. Tyler had this way of making everything seem hilarious. The pretentious couple arguing about wine pairings through the bistro window, the jogger who nearly tripped over his own feet, even my terrible impression of our overly intense spin instructor. No way, she doesn't actually say that, Tyler laughed as we turned onto Maple Street. I swear on my life, every single class, feel the burn in your soul, people. Your legs are just the vessel. I threw my arms out dramatically, nearly stumbling on the sidewalk. Tyler caught my elbow, steadying me, his hand lingering just a moment too long. You're hilarious. How come we never talked at the gym before? Maybe because you're usually surrounded by those 20-something fitness influencers, I teased, immediately regretting how flirty it sounded. Trust me, they've got nothing on you. My cheeks burned. When was the last time Victor had said anything like that? When was the last time he'd even looked up from his spreadsheets long enough to notice what I was wearing? Here we are, I announced as we reached the entrance to our building. The brick facade looked tired under the fluorescent security lights, nothing like the charming brownstones Tyler probably imagined successful 30-something women lived in. Nice place, he said, though I caught him glancing up at the fire escape zigzagging across the front. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime, without the workout gear. Before I could answer, movement caught my eye. 4 floors up, on our balcony, a shadow shifted behind the railing. Victor. He was standing there, completely still, watching us. My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to keep smiling. Coffee sounds great. I'll see you at the gym. Looking forward to it. Tyler squeezed my shoulder gently before heading down the street, hands in his pockets, whistling. I waved until he disappeared around the corner, very aware of the eyes still watching from above. The lobby door felt heavier than usual as I pushed through it. The elevator ride to the 4th floor gave me just enough time to craft my story. Victor was paranoid. Always had been. He'd probably been checking the weather or watering the sad little herbs he insisted on growing in pots out there. He hadn't been watching us specifically. The apartment door was unlocked, which meant Victor had been expecting me. I found him in the living room, sitting in his leather chair with a book in his lap, but his eyes were on me. Hey, I said, dropping my purse on the side table. Maya asleep? An hour ago. His voice was carefully neutral. What took you so long? What do you mean? I kicked off my heels, buying time. You left the office at 5:30. It's almost 10. I told you I was meeting Jenna for drinks. The lie came easily. I had planned to meet Jenna, but she'd cancelled last minute. We lost track of time catching up. Victor closed his book, some dry accounting manual, and set it aside. How is Jenna? She's good. Busy with work. I moved toward the kitchen, needing to put distance between us. Her new boss is apparently a nightmare. Victor followed me, leaning against the door frame as I poured myself a glass of water. Anyone walk you home? There it was. My heart hammered, but I kept my expression neutral. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Victor, you're being weird. I turned to face him, putting on my best confused wife expression. Why would someone walk me home? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. No reason, just wondering. Well, to answer your paranoid question, no. I took the usual route, same as always. Another lie, but what he didn't know wouldn't hurt him. Victor studied my face for a long moment, and I had the uncomfortable feeling he could see right through me. But then he nodded and stepped back. I'm going to bed. Long day tomorrow. I'll be up in a few minutes, I called after him, but he was already disappearing down the hallway. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the water glass, trying to calm my racing pulse. It was nothing. A friendly walk home with someone from the gym. Victor was just being his usual suspicious self, probably jealous that I had friends, and he spent most evenings buried in financial reports. But as I finally headed to bed, I couldn't shake the image of that shadow on the balcony, perfectly still, watching everything. The next morning felt different. Victor moved through his routine, coffee, newspaper, checking his phone, with a mechanical precision that set my nerves on edge. Maya chattered about her upcoming school play, oblivious to the tension crackling between her parents. Mummy, are you coming to see me be a tree? Maya asked, syrup from her pancakes coating her chin. Of course, sweetheart. I wiped her face with a napkin, grateful for the distraction. I wouldn't miss it. Victor folded his newspaper with sharp, deliberate creases. What time does it start? 2:00 on Friday, Maya said. Mrs. Henderson says I have the most important tree role because I'm tall. You're the most beautiful tree in the whole forest, I told her, earning a giggle. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something flickered across his features. Surprise, maybe anger. He stood abruptly. I need to make a call. He disappeared into his home office, closing the door behind him. Through the thin walls, I could hear his voice, low and intense, but couldn't make out words. Why is Daddy mad? Maya asked, her 7-year-old intuition picking up what I'd hoped to hide. He's not mad, baby, just work stuff. I forced brightness into my voice. Finish your breakfast or you'll be late for school. Victor emerged just as I was packing Maya's lunch. His expression was unreadable, but there was something new in his eyes, a cold distance that made my chest tighten. I'll drop her off today, he said, taking Maya's backpack from the counter. I can do it. It's on my way. I've got it. His tone left no room for argument. After they left, the apartment felt suffocating. I tried to focus on getting ready for work, but my hands shook as I applied mascara. The phone call, Victor's behavior, the way he'd looked at me across the breakfast table, it all felt like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. My phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. Heard you had an interesting night. Call me. My blood turned to ice. How could Jenna possibly know about Tyler? Unless someone had seen us, talked to someone who talked to someone else. In a neighborhood like ours, gossip traveled faster than wildfire. I called her on my way to work. Eirene, girl, what were you thinking? Jenna's voice was equal parts amused and concerned. What are you talking about? Mrs. Patterson from 2B saw you with some guy last night. Said you two were practically putting on a show on the sidewalk. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who spent her evenings planted by her window, like a security camera. Of course. It was nothing, Jenna. Just someone from the gym who happened to be walking the same direction. That's not how she tells it. According to her, you were laughing loud enough to wake the dead and letting him put his hands all over you. That's ridiculous. We barely touched. The lie tasted bitter. You know how these old ladies exaggerate everything. Maybe, but you might want to smooth things over with Victor. Word is he was watching from your balcony. After hanging up, I sat in my car outside the office building, trying to process. Mrs. Patterson had seen us. Victor had definitely been watching, and now Jenna knew, which meant others would know soon enough. But it really had been innocent, mostly innocent. Tyler was attractive and charming, and yes, I'd enjoyed the attention. Was that such a crime? Victor barely looked at me anymore, buried in his work and his routines. Was I supposed to apologize for feeling alive for 20 minutes? By the time I got home that evening, I'd convinced myself I was the victim here. Victor was being controlling and paranoid, just like always. If he'd paid half as much attention to me as he did to his clients' tax returns, maybe I wouldn't have been so susceptible to a little harmless flirtation. I found him in the kitchen, stirring something that smelled like his mother's beef stew recipe. Maya was at the table, coloring. "Smells good," I said, testing the waters. "Sandra dropped off the ingredients," he replied without turning around. "Thought Maya might like it." Of course. His mother. Sandra had probably heard about last night too, which meant I was about to face the full force of the Malvern family judgment machine. That was nice of her. I kept my voice light, casual. "How was your day, baby?" I asked Maya. "Good. Tommy Morrison threw up during math, and Mrs. Chen let us have extra recess." "Exciting stuff," I laughed, ruffling her hair. Victor finally turned around, wooden spoon in hand. "How was your evening last night? Really?" Maya looked up from her coloring book, sensing the shift in tone. "Victor, not in front of—" "It's a simple question, Eirene. How was your evening?" I could feel Maya's eyes bouncing between us like she was watching a tennis match. "Fine. If he wanted to do this here, we'd do it here." It was lovely, actually. I had a nice dinner, a pleasant walk home, and got to meet someone new. Someone who actually seemed interested in talking to me. Victor's grip on the spoon tightened. Someone who seemed interested. Yes, novel concept, I know. "Mummy, who did you meet?" Maya asked, her crayon hovering over a purple flower. "Just a friend from the gym, sweetheart. Someone who knows how to have a conversation that doesn't revolve around quarterly reports and tax codes." Victor set the spoon down carefully. Too carefully. "I see." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you're more interested in playing detective than actually talking to your wife." Maybe because my wife was flirting with another man, right outside our building where our daughter could have seen. Maya's crayon stopped moving entirely. "Flirting?" I laughed, but it came out sharp and brittle. "Having a conversation with another human being isn't flirting, Victor, though I can see how you might not recognize normal social interaction. Normal social interaction doesn't involve letting strange men put their hands on you." He steadied me when I stumbled. "God, you make it sound like we were making out on the sidewalk." "Were you drinking?" The question hit like a slap. "Excuse me?" "Were you drinking before you let this man walk you home?" Maya had gone completely still, her eyes wide and worried. "I had 1 glass of wine with dinner. 1. And I don't appreciate the interrogation." "I'm not interrogating you. I'm trying to understand why my wife thought it was appropriate to—" "To what?" "To have a normal conversation with another adult. To laugh at something funny. To feel like an actual person instead of just the woman who does your laundry and watches your daughter." "Our daughter." "Right now it feels like your daughter, since apparently I can't be trusted to walk down the street without a chaperone." Victor looked at Maya, who had tears gathering in the corners of her eyes, and his expression softened slightly. "Maya, why don't you go wash up for dinner?" "Are you and Mommy fighting?" she asked in a small voice. "No, baby," I said quickly. "Daddy's just being dramatic about nothing. Go wash your hands." After Maya left, Victor turned back to me with something dangerous in his eyes. "Dramatic about nothing. Yes, you're acting like I committed some terrible crime, when all I did was walk home with someone who was being friendly." "Friendly. Stop repeating everything I say like it's evidence in a trial." Maybe because it feels like I'm married to someone I don't recognize anymore. The words hung between us like a blade. For a moment, I almost felt guilty, almost apologized. But then I remembered the shadow on the balcony, watching, judging, and the anger flared back to life. "Maybe you don't recognize me because you never actually look at me anymore. When was the last time you asked about my day, my work, my thoughts on anything that doesn't involve this apartment or Maya's schedule?" I ask. You ask about logistics. Did I pick up the dry cleaning? Did I schedule Maya's dentist appointment? Did I remember to pay the electric bill? You don't ask about me, Victor. You haven't in years. He stared at me for a long moment, and I thought I saw something break behind his eyes. So this is my fault. I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. I'm saying maybe if you paid half as much attention to your wife as you do to your clients, she wouldn't be so grateful when someone else shows her basic human kindness. Victor nodded slowly, like he was filing away my words for later examination. I'll remember that, he said quietly. Maya's footsteps echoed down the hallway, and we both plastered on fake smiles as she returned to the kitchen. Dinner passed in tense silence, broken only by Maya's attempts to fill the quiet with stories about school and questions about the weekend. That night, Victor went to bed without saying goodnight. I stayed up late, scrolling through social media and trying to convince myself I'd done nothing wrong. Tyler had liked my Instagram post from earlier that day, a photo of my coffee with some motivational quote about embracing new opportunities. It was harmless. Everything about the previous night had been harmless. So why did I feel like I was standing on the edge of a cliff? The office felt different the next morning. Conversation stopped when I walked by. Glances were exchanged. The usual friendly greetings from my HR team felt forced, artificial. I'd barely settled at my desk when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thanks for the fun walk home last night. Coffee later this week, Tyler. My heart hammered as I quickly deleted the message, but not before noticing that Melissa from accounting had been looking over my shoulder. She turned away quickly, but the damage was done. By lunch, I could feel the weight of whispered conversations following me through the break room. I grabbed a salad from the refrigerator and sat at my usual table, pretending to read emails while straining to hear what people were saying. Saw her with some guy. Husband was watching from the balcony. Mrs. Patterson told my neighbor. The neighborhood gossip network had struck again. Mrs. Patterson must have called everyone in the building, who called their friends, who called their co-workers. In less than 24 hours, my innocent walk home had become the most interesting thing to happen on Maple Street in months. Jenna appeared at my table, sliding into the chair across from me, with her usual dramatic flair. Girl, you need to do some damage control, she said without preamble. Hello to you too. I'm serious, Eirene. People are talking, and not in a good way. People need to mind their own business. Maybe, but that's not how the world works. Jenna leaned forward, lowering her voice. What exactly happened with this gym guy? Nothing happened. We walked in the same direction and had a conversation. That's literally it. That's not what I'm hearing. Then what are you hearing? Jenna glanced around the break room, making sure no one was listening. That you were drunk, flirting shamelessly, and letting him grope you on the sidewalk while your husband watched from your apartment. That's insane. None of that is true. I know that, you know that, but perception is reality, especially in a place like this. She gestured around the office. Half these people are married with kids. They're not going to be sympathetic to a woman who appears to be cheating on her husband. I'm not cheating on anyone. Several heads turned in our direction. I lowered my voice. I'm not cheating on anyone, I repeated. I had a conversation with another human being. Since when is that a crime? Since you're married and he's not your husband. Jenna's expression was sympathetic but firm. Look, I'm not judging you, but you need to think about how this looks. How it looks, or how it is. Both, because right now, they're the same thing. I spent the rest of the day fielding subtle questions and not so subtle stares. My boss, Patricia, called me into her office around 4. Eirene, I need to talk to you about something delicate. My stomach sank. Okay. There have been some concerns raised about your conduct outside of work. My conduct outside of work? What does that have to do with my job performance? Patricia shifted uncomfortably in her chair. As HR administrator, you represent this company. Your behavior reflects on all of us. What behavior? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not saying you have, but appearances matter, and right now, there are questions about your judgment. Questions from who? That's not important. What's important is that you understand how seriously we take these matters. I felt like I was in some kind of alternate reality, where walking home with someone from the gym was grounds for professional discipline. Patricia, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I haven't done anything that compromises my position here or reflects poorly on the company. I hope not, but I need you to be very careful about your choices going forward. We can't afford any scandals, even small ones. Scandals? The word came out louder than I intended. You're calling a conversation with someone from my gym a scandal? I'm calling it a situation that needs to be managed carefully. I left her office feeling like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. In less than 48 hours, I'd gone from being a respected HR administrator to someone whose conduct was being questioned by her own boss. The drive home was a blur of anger and confusion. How had things escalated so quickly? How had a simple walk with Tyler turned into office gossip and professional warnings? I found Victor in the kitchen again, but this time he wasn't cooking. He was sitting at the table with his laptop open, a stack of papers beside him, and his phone recording our conversation. "What's that for?" I asked, nodding at the phone. "Documentation." "Documentation of what?" "Our conversations, going forward." A chill ran down my spine. "Victor, what are you doing?" "Protecting myself. And Maya." "Protecting yourself from what? From me?" He looked up from his laptop, and his eyes were colder than I'd ever seen them. "From whatever this is turning into." "This isn't turning into anything. You're making it into something it's not." "Am I? Because I got some interesting calls today." My heart stopped. "What kind of calls?" "From my mother, from Brian, from 3 different neighbors, all asking about my wife's new friend. Brian, Victor's older brother, who'd never liked me anyway. If he was involved, this was about to get much worse." "And what did you tell them?" "The truth, that I don't know what to think anymore." "There's nothing to think about. I walked home with someone from the gym. That's it. End of story." "Is it?" "Yes." "Then why did he text you today asking about coffee?" The blood drained from my face. "How do you know about that?" "Because I know you, Eirene. And I know when you're lying." I deleted that text immediately. I didn't respond. "But you didn't tell him not to contact you again." I didn't think it was necessary." "You didn't think it was necessary to tell another man to stop asking you on dates?" "It wasn't a date, it was coffee." Victor laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Right, coffee." Maya appeared in the doorway, still in her school clothes, looking smaller than usual. "Why are you and Mommy always fighting now?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Victor immediately softened, closing his laptop and reaching for our daughter. "We're not fighting, sweetheart. We're just talking about grown-up things." "It sounds like fighting," Maya said, climbing into his lap. "Sarah's parents fight all the time, and then her daddy moved away." "That's not going to happen," I said quickly. "Daddy and I are just working through some things." Maya looked at me with 7-year-old skepticism. "That's what Sarah's mommy said too." After Maya went to bed, Victor and I sat in the living room in silence. The distance between us felt like an ocean. "This has to stop," he said finally. "I agree. You need to stop treating me like a criminal." "I need to stop." His voice was dangerously quiet. "Eirene, do you have any idea what today was like for me? Getting calls from my family asking if my wife is having an affair, having my mother ask if Maya is safe in this house." "Safe? Victor, you're being ridiculous." "Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, my wife is lying to me, sneaking around with other men, and then gaslighting me when I ask questions about it." "Gaslighting? I'm not gaslighting anyone." "Then what do you call telling me I'm paranoid and controlling when I have legitimate concerns about your behavior?" I call it defending myself against false accusations. False accusations? He nodded slowly. Right. He stood up and headed toward the hallway. Where are you going? To bed. Some of us have to work tomorrow. What's that supposed to mean? It means some of us can't afford to have our professional reputation destroyed because of personal drama. The words hit their target. I sat alone in the living room for another hour, replaying the conversation, trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. My phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. People are really talking now. You might want to lay low for a while. Then another from my mother. Sharon called. She's worried about you and Victor. Call me. Even my own mother was getting pulled into this mess. I turned off my phone and went to bed, but sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tyler's smile, heard Victor's cold voice, felt the weight of all those stares at the office. It had been one walk, one conversation, one moment of feeling attractive and interesting and alive. How had it turned into this? Saturday morning brought an ominous calm. Victor was up early, moving through the apartment with purpose, gathering papers and making quiet phone calls. Maya sat at the kitchen table, eating cereal and watching cartoons on his iPad, oblivious to the storm building around her. I tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy, making coffee and checking my phone, but every notification felt like a potential bomb. The family group chat, usually filled with Sandra's photos of her garden and Brian's complaints about work, had been suspiciously quiet since Thursday. Then my phone rang. Sandra. Eirene, we need to talk. Victor's mother had never been warm toward me, but her voice now carried an Arctic chill that made my stomach clench. Good morning to you too, Sandra. Don't. Just don't. I could hear her breathing heavily, like she was trying to control her temper. I'm coming over. Victor's not there, is he? He's here. Why? Because I want to talk to you without him having to listen to this conversation. She hung up before I could respond. 20 minutes later, Sandra stood in my living room like an avenging angel in a beige cardigan. Her silver hair was perfectly styled despite the early hour, and her blue eyes, so much like Victor's, were blazing with righteous fury. Maya, sweetheart, why don't you go play in your room for a while, she said, her voice immediately softening for her granddaughter. But Grandma, I want to show you my new drawing. In a few minutes, baby. Grandma needs to talk to Mommy first. After Maya disappeared down the hallway, Sandra turned back to me with laser focus. What the hell do you think you're doing? Excuse me. You heard me. What do you think you're doing to my son? Sandra, I think there's been some misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding here is Victor thinking he married someone with integrity. The words hit like a physical slap. How dare you? How dare I? How dare you? Sandra's voice rose, and I heard Maya's bedroom door creak open slightly. Do you have any idea what you've put him through this week? What you've put this family through? I haven't put anyone through anything. Victor is overreacting to a completely innocent... Innocent? Sandra laughed bitterly. Eirene, half the neighborhood saw you making a fool of yourself with some stranger while your husband watched from the balcony. How is that innocent? I was having a conversation. You were flirting, publicly, while married to my son who works his ass off to provide for you and Maya. Victor and I both work. Victor works. You play office politics and apparently cruise gyms for younger men. The accusation was so unfair, so twisted, that for a moment I couldn't speak. When I found my voice, it came out shaky with rage. Get out of my house. Your house? This apartment is in Victor's name. Everything in it was paid for by Victor. You seem to forget that. I contribute to this household. You contribute drama, and embarrassment, and apparently a complete lack of respect for your marriage vows. I haven't broken any marriage vows. Haven't you? Because from where I'm standing, you're halfway there already. Maya appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide and frightened. Grandma, why are you yelling at Mommy? Sandra immediately composed herself. her expression shifting to gentle concern. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups have to have difficult conversations. Is Mummy in trouble? The question hung in the air like smoke. Sandra looked at me with something that might have been pity. No, baby. Mummy just needs to remember what's important. After Sandra left, I sat on the couch feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. Maya climbed up beside me, her small hand finding mine. Are you okay, Mummy? I'm fine, sweetheart. Grandma was just upset about something silly. She seemed really mad. Sometimes people get mad about things that aren't worth getting mad about. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. Was this worth getting mad about? Had I crossed a line I didn't even realize existed? My phone buzzed with a group text notification. The family chat was active again. Sandra. Had a conversation with Eirene this morning. Very enlightening. Brian. How is she handling things? Sandra. About as well as you'd expect. No accountability whatsoever. Victor. Can we please not discuss this in the group chat? Brian. Maybe if your wife hadn't made it everyone's business, we wouldn't have to. I stared at the screen, watching my marriage and family relationships disintegrate in real time. These people who had welcomed me into their family 7 years ago were now discussing me like I was a problem to be solved. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. Apologies, explanations, defenses. Nothing seemed adequate. Finally, I sent, I can see this chat. I'm right here. The response was immediate. Brian, then maybe you can explain what you were thinking. Sandra, we're waiting. The cursor blinked in the message box. What could I say? That I was lonely? That Victor had become a stranger who treated me like a household manager rather than a wife? That Tyler's attention had made me feel like a woman instead of just a mother and employee? Instead, I typed, I'm sorry if my actions were misinterpreted. It was never my intention to hurt anyone. Brian, misinterpreted? Sandra, there's that word again. Victor, can we please do this privately? But it was too late. The floodgates had opened. Brian, Victor, I love you, but you need to face reality here. This isn't going to get better by itself. Sandra, Eirene, I've known you for 7 years. This isn't like you. What's going on? For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Sandra was offering an olive branch, a chance to explain. I typed, I've been feeling disconnected lately. Like Victor and I are just going through the motions. When Tyler was friendly, it felt nice to be seen as more than just someone's wife or mother. The typing indicators appeared and disappeared for several long minutes. Finally, Sandra responded, That's what marriage counseling is for. Not flirting with strangers. Brian, agreed. You don't fix marriage problems by creating new ones. Victor, I'm turning off notifications for this chat. And then silence. I sat staring at the phone, feeling more isolated than I had in years. My husband was shutting down. His family was circling the wagons. My co-workers were gossiping. Even Jenna was keeping her distance. All because of one walk home. That evening, Victor returned from wherever he'd spent the day looking like he'd aged 5 years. Maya ran to greet him, and I watched him scoop her up with the same gentle patience he'd always shown her. But when his eyes met mine over her head, there was nothing familiar there. We need to talk, he said quietly. Maya, why don't you watch a movie in your room? I suggested. Can I watch Moana? Sure, baby. After she was settled, Victor and I sat at the kitchen table, like strangers negotiating a business deal. I saw my lawyer today, he said without preamble. My blood turned to ice. Your lawyer? I needed to understand my options. Options for what? For protecting Maya. And myself. Victor, you're scaring me. Good, because I'm scared too. Scared of what you're becoming. Scared of what this is doing to our daughter. Scared that the woman I married is gone and I don't know who's taken her place. I'm still me. I'm still the same person. Are you? Because the woman I married wouldn't have done what you did this week. She wouldn't have embarrassed me in front of the entire neighborhood. She wouldn't have lied to my face, and she sure as hell wouldn't have blamed me for being upset about it. I never blamed you. You told me I was paranoid and controlling. You said if I paid more attention to you, this wouldn't have happened. How is that not blaming me? I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died in my throat. Because he was right. I had said those things. I had made it his fault. I was defensive, I said finally. I felt attacked. You felt attacked because you knew you'd done something wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. Then why are we here, Eirene? Why is my mother calling you a disgrace? Why is my brother asking if I need a place to stay? Why is our 7-year-old daughter asking if Daddy is going to move away? The last question hit like a punch to the gut. Maya asked that. This afternoon, while you were texting with your mother about how unreasonable I'm being. I wasn't, but I had been. I'd spent an hour on the phone with my mother, painting myself as the victim of Victor's jealousy and his family's judgment. I can't do this anymore, Victor said quietly. Can't do what? This, us, the lying, the manipulation, the constant feeling like I'm crazy for expecting basic respect from my own wife. Victor, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. Can we? Because every time I try to talk to you about it, you make it my fault. Every time I express concern, you call me controlling. Every time I ask for honesty, you give me excuses. I'm being honest now. Are you? Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear? I stared at him across the table, this man I'd shared a bed with for 7 years, and realized I didn't know how to answer that question. Had I been honest? Or had I been managing the situation, controlling the narrative, protecting myself? I don't know, I whispered. For the first time since this whole mess started, Victor's expression softened slightly. That's the first true thing you've said all week. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of 7 years and one terrible decision pressing down on both of us. What happens now? I asked. I don't know that either, but I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. So what are you saying? I'm saying I need time to think, and space to figure out if there's anything left of us worth saving. The words hit like a death sentence. Victor, please don't do this. Don't let one mistake destroy our family. I'm not destroying anything, Eirene. I'm trying to save what's left. That night, Victor slept in the guest room. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every choice, every moment that had led us here. It had started with Tyler's smile and my need to feel attractive. It had escalated with my defensiveness and Victor's hurt, and now it was ending with lawyers and separation and our daughter asking if Daddy was going to leave. All because I'd wanted to feel special for 20 minutes, all because I'd forgotten that I already was. Monday morning brought an email that made my hands shake. Meeting scheduled for Wednesday, 2 p.m. Downtown law office of Morrison and Associates. Please confirm attendance. V. Malvern. Formal. Cold, like I was a client instead of his wife. I called him immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried his office, but his secretary said he was unavailable. By noon, desperation had set in, and I found myself standing outside his accounting firm, waiting for him to come back from lunch. When he finally appeared, walking with 2 colleagues, and laughing at something one of them had said, he looked lighter somehow. Happier. Like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Victor. He stopped mid-sentence, his expression immediately shuddering when he saw me. Eirene, what are you doing here? His colleagues glanced between us, clearly sensing tension. We'll catch up with you later, Vic, one of them said, and they disappeared into the building. I got your email. Good. Then you know when and where to be. Victor, please, can't we talk about this privately? At home? We tried talking at home. It didn't work. Because you blindsided me with accusations. I asked you about your evening. That's not an accusation. A woman walking by glanced at us curiously. Victor noticed and stepped closer, lowering his voice. This isn't the place for this conversation. Then where is? You won't take my calls. You're sleeping in the guest room. You scheduled a meeting with lawyers like I'm some kind of business adversary. Maybe because that's what this has become, a business transaction. The words cut deep. Is that really what you think of our marriage? I don't know what to think of our marriage anymore. Victor, I love you. I love our family. I made a mistake, but it doesn't have to end everything. A mistake. He nodded slowly. Is that what we're calling it now? What would you call it? The beginning of the end. He turned to walk away, but I grabbed his arm. Please don't do this. Think about Maya. Think about what this will do to her. I am thinking about Maya. That's all I've been thinking about. He gently removed my hand from his arm. Wednesday at 2. Don't be late. That evening, I tried to create some normalcy for Maya's sake. I helped with her homework, made her favorite dinner, and read her 3 bedtime stories instead of the usual one. But she could sense the tension radiating from every corner of the apartment. Mummy, why does Daddy sleep in the other room now? He's been having trouble sleeping. Sometimes grown-ups need their own space to get better rest. Is he sick? No, sweetheart, he's just tired. Are you getting divorced? The question hit like a lightning bolt. Maya, why would you ask that? Because Sarah's parents used to fight all the time, and then they had meetings with lawyers, and then her daddy moved away. I pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Daddy and I are working through some problems, but we both love you very much. No matter what happens, that will never change. But you might get divorced. I wanted to lie, to promise her that everything would be fine, but the words wouldn't come. I don't know, baby, I hope not. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then, I think you should say sorry. Sorry for what? For making Daddy sad. When I make someone sad, I say sorry and try to fix it. Out of the mouths of babes. Wednesday arrived grey and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. I'd barely slept, running through every possible scenario, every argument I could make, every way to convince Victor that our marriage was worth saving. The law office was in one of those gleaming downtown towers that made you feel small and insignificant. Morrison and Associates occupied the 15th floor, all glass and chrome and intimidating leather furniture. Victor was already there when I arrived, sitting in a conference room with a woman in her 40s who radiated competence and authority. She stood when I entered, extending a manicured hand. Mrs. Malvern, I'm Jennifer Morrison. Please, have a seat. I sat across from Victor, the polished table stretching between us like an ocean. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Before we begin, I said, I want to say something. Jennifer Morrison glanced at Victor, who nodded slightly. I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you. I know I handled everything badly from the moment you asked me about that night. My voice cracked slightly. But Victor, we have 7 years together. We have Maya. We have a life. Please don't throw it all away because of one stupid decision. Victor finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my heart sink. Not anger anymore, not even hurt, just emptiness. Tell me about Tyler, he said quietly. What? Tyler Griggs, 29 years old, personal trainer at your gym. Tell me about him. My blood turned to ice. How do you know his last name? Jennifer Morrison slid a folder across the table. We know quite a bit about Mr. Griggs. With trembling hands, I opened the folder. Photos, dozens of them. Tyler and me at the bistro, laughing over drinks. Tyler's hand on my elbow as we walked. Tyler leaning close to whisper something in my ear. The two of us standing outside our building, his hand on my shoulder. Where did you get these? Does it matter? Victor's voice was steady, professional. The question is whether you're going to keep lying about what happened that night. I stared at the photos, seeing our interaction through a stranger's lens. We looked intimate, familiar, like two people who knew each other well, not casual acquaintances from the gym. This looks worse than it was. Does it? Because there are also these. Jennifer slid another set of papers across the table. Text message logs. My text messages. How did you... You left your phone unlocked last Tuesday morning. I took screenshots. There they were, in black and white. Messages between me and Jenna that I'd forgotten about. He's so hot, like ridiculously hot. Girl, you're married. I know, but looking doesn't hurt, right? Looking is one thing, flirting is another. It's harmless. Victor will never find out. Famous last words. I felt sick reading them, seeing my own words, my own thoughts, laid out like evidence in a criminal trial. There's more, Victor said quietly. More screenshots, messages to my sister about feeling trapped in my marriage, messages to my mother about Victor being emotionally distant and more like a roommate than a husband, messages to co-workers about the cute guy from the gym who'd been paying attention to me. Victor, you're taking these out of context. Am I? Because it seems pretty clear to me. You've been unhappy in our marriage, attracted to another man, and actively pursuing something with him while lying to me about it. Rachel found me at the kitchen table, divorce papers spread like a grim prophecy. Oh, honey, she said, sliding into Elliot's empty chair. I'm so sorry. Are you? My voice cracked. You're the one who sent him those texts. You showed him how unhappy I was. I was worried about both of you, she said gently. I thought if he knew, you could work it out. Instead, you gave him ammunition. I gave him the truth you should have told him instead of complaining to everyone else. I wanted to rage, but she was right. Everyone was right, except me. What am I going to do? I whispered. Sign the papers, she said. Let him go. Focus on being the best mother to Sophie. What if I'm not cut out for this? Then you figure it out. That's what adults do. That night I called my mother. As expected, she exploded. Don't sign. We'll fight this. Get the best lawyer. Mom, stop. It wasn't one mistake. I've been a terrible wife for years. Elliot deserves better. What about what you deserve? Your happiness? What about Sophie's happiness? What about doing the right thing for once? Silence. This doesn't sound like you. Maybe that's the problem. I hung up, sat at Rachel's table and signed every line. The divorce finalized 6 months later. I had my own apartment, therapy, and the slow work of becoming someone Sophie could rely on. She adjusted, though she still asked when Mommy and Daddy would live together again. Elliot stayed polite but distant. We co-parented efficiently, school events, doctor visits, but nothing personal. A year later, at Sophie's school play, we shared a row. You look good, he said. Thanks, you too. We watched our daughter shine, proud parents united by love for her, if not each other. After, Sophie asked for ice cream, like we used to. We went, the three of us in a booth, her chattering happily. For an hour, it almost felt like family. When we parted, Elliot said quietly, "Thank you for signing without a fight. Thank you for protecting her when I couldn't." 2 years on, I married David in a small ceremony. Sophie was my maid of honor. Elliot walked her down the aisle, placed her hand in mine and whispered, "Be happy." You too. He was with someone new. Sophie adored her. I felt no jealousy, only gratitude for the lessons learned through loss. I'd destroyed my first marriage chasing validation, but in the ashes, I'd found honesty, accountability, and the truth that real happiness comes from within. As David and I danced, Sophie watching with shining eyes, I finally felt complete, not because someone completed me, but because I'd learned to complete myself. And that was enough.